Okay, this one is page 56. I think it's the same one, same in the other one. Which one do we have? This starts up Melamed Shalosh Shina. That's page 56 there? Okay, page 56. Okay, these are translations of talks that Rav Shlomo gave, and this particular collection was done by Moshe David when he was 18 years old. And it's interesting, he put in the front, he said, it's all rights belong to God. In other words, it's not copyrighted. Okay, the background to this particular teaching is this week's Parshat B'haalotcha. It starts out talking about Hashem is telling Aharon HaKohen, the high priest, how to light the menorah. Okay, and the instruction is that that there were 7 candles, 3 on each side, and the center one. And it says that that the 3 on each side sort of like face the center one. Okay, so that's a whole thing in itself. And then at the end of that passage, it says, "Vayas Kain Aaron." Aaron did as God told him to do. And everybody's asking the question, so what did you expect? Of course he's going to do what Hashem told him to do, right? Like, why does the Torah have to tell you, that he did what he was told to do? It's obvious. It's like, and if it wouldn't have said that, would you think that he did something different? You wouldn't think that he did anything different. Of course, God told him to do it like this. He's going to do it like that. So Rashi raises the question as well, and Rashi's answer. Rashi is the most famous commentary on the Torah. So his answer is that the Torah is praising Aharon that he didn't do it any differently. Please tell them to wipe their shoes in case they're wet. Okay. That, in other words, that he didn't make any changes. So it still leaves us with the question. You understand? What did you think? He's going to make changes? Of course he's going to do what he was told to do. Come on in. Come, come sit down. Right? So it still leaves us with a question, so one interpretation is that he did as he was told to do, and he did this for 40 years. And the great thing about him is that the word Shina can be read as Shina, sleeping. In other words, he wasn't bored. Every day he did it as if he's doing it for the first time, right? But that's a different interpretation. Now Rav Shlomo is going to go and give us a whole other insight. That's what we want to see today. Okay.
But this other part of the Torah where Hashem commands and then it says, and Moshe, doesn't it say that Moshe did what he was told?
Yeah. So we have to see over there also. We have to see, why is the Torah telling us that? Okay, but you're right. There are a few, but not very many. Not very many. Doesn't usually. Usually it doesn't say that. Okay? So, so Rav Shlomo says like this. Kasher choshvim ala kohen hagadol. When you think about the high priest, right? What do you imagine? So Vivian, let's say, can you imagine the high priest of our holy Beit HaMikdash? Tell me what you visualize.
A whole priest of Beit HaMikdash.
Where is he? In the street?
No, he's somehow up.
He's somewhere. He's not. Yeah, somewhere up. He's not here in this world, so to speak, right?
No, he's also in this world.
He's also in this world,
Sure.
but I know what you mean. But he's
He's
more.
one kind of.
He's more there, and his body is here, right?
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So he says, "בוודאי מדמיינים אותו מתיישב לו על כורסה בבית המקדש." So we imagine probably sitting on some kind of a fancy seat in the temple. מסתכל על השעון ומתכונן להקריב את קורבן התמיד של שחרית, and he's waiting, looking at the clock, and he's waiting to bring the first sacrifice of the day. הוא מצלצל בפעמון, he rings the bell, או אולי מדווח בקשר, ומביאים לו את הקורבן, and the assistants bring him the animal for the sacrifice. ולאחר שהקריב את הקורבן והוא כבר עייף, and after he does the sacrifice, maybe he's a little bit tired, אולי הוא מניח תפילין דרבנו תם, הוא מחכה שיביאו לו את התמיד של בין הארבעים. So, like, I just sort of imagine this person, he's all the time in the temple, right? And he's doing whatever he needs to do in the temple. So says Rav Shlomo, אבל האמת היא, but the truth is, היא אחרת, it's different. מה כתוב על אהרון הכהן? What do we learn? What do we know about Aaron הכהן? אהרון היה מסתובב ברחובות. Aaron, his name was Aaron. היה מסתובב ברחובות. He was walking in the streets, מדבר ועוזר לכל אחד, and he was talking and helping everybody. הוא היה יוצא מביתו מוקדם בבוקר. For example, he would leave his house early in the morning. ורואה את ינקל העצוב, and he sees Yankel is a little bit sad. And he asks him, like, what's going on? And Yankel אמר לו שהוא רב עם אשתו, and Yankel says to him he had a fight with his wife. ואהרון היה הולך לאשתו לאה ואומר לה, את יודעת כמה ינקל שבור? So Aaron Kohen would go to his wife, and he would say, Yankel is so hurt, so broken that he fought with you. והם היו עושים שלום ביניהם, and they would make peace with each other. In other words, where is he getting this from? From the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. In Pirkei Avot, Hillel says, be a student of Yaakov, of Aaron HaKohen. In what way? Ohev shalom v'godev shalom. He loved peace and he pursued peace. And the commentators over there explained that when he would see that two people had an argument, he'd go to each one, and he'd say, your friend feels so terrible that he had a fight with you. He'd go to the other one, he would tell him the same thing, and then they would meet and they would make peace. Or husband and wife, he'd go to the husband and he'd say, your wife is really so sorry that she had a big argument with you, and then he'd go to the husband and he'd say, he'd go to the wife and he'd say, your husband is so upset that he had an argument with you, and they would make peace. In other words, the way he's being described is not the way Hillel is describing him. He's not describing him as somebody who's spending his entire time in the temple. He's more spending his time among the people, right? Now the next line over here, this is only Shlomo's. Well, it's a good question. We'll talk about it in a few minutes, okay? So then Shlomo says, he says like this, he says, אני בטוח שאהרון הכהן היה מאחר כמעט כל יום להקרבת הקורבן. He says, I'm sure that Aaron must have been late every day to bring the sacrifice. בגלל שהוא היה מתעסק בעשיית שלום בין אנשים, because he was always busy making peace between the people, so he probably came late with the sacrifice. Now Shlomo always came late. Shlomo Karabach, the one who's giving this lesson, and he was famous for being late all the time, okay? Because he was busy with people all the time. Anyway, so Otam Sfatayim, so now listen to this. This sentence is amazing. It says, Otam Sfatayim Kedoshot, those same holy lips, שהיו מוציאים את שם השם המפורש ביום הכיפורים, that would pronounce the holy name of God on Yom Kippur, Hayu osot shalom bein anashim. Those same lips were making peace between people. And this is an extremely deep thing that he just said. In other words, let me put it this way. Everything in the Torah relates to every one of us. Whether you're a Kohen or whether you're not a Kohen, everything relates to us. Okay? Now, the difference between a Kohen and a Levi and a Yisrael, a man and a woman, is only in terms of asiyah, in terms of action. There's certain things that a Kohen does that I cannot do. There's certain things that I can do that a Kohen cannot do. In other words, when it comes to action, there's a difference in action, but in terms of thought and speech and conceptually, everything relates, the entire Torah relates to every one of us. Okay? What's the point? The point is this. So you know that on Yom Kippur, the high priest went into the Holy of Holies. And what did he do there? He actually pronounced the divine name, which we don't even know how to pronounce, but we're not allowed to. It was only pronounced once a year on Yom Kippur by the high priest. Okay. Now, I could relate to that in the sense of saying, oh, it was such an awesome holy thing that I have no way of relating with it. It's so beyond me. I can relate to it in that way by saying it's beyond me. But that's not a practical relationship. Okay? Practically speaking, I want to know, what does it mean for someone to say God's name? What is the real meaning of that? So Rav Shlomo is saying, take a look and see what were those lips speaking the rest of the year. The same mouth that says God's name, how was he talking? What was he talking about? How was he talking the rest of the year? And the rest of the year, what do we know? We know that he was busy making peace between people. You understand? So what he's saying is that, let's say I see somebody coming out of the Beit HaKnesset, out of the synagogue, right? You want to know, you see me coming out of shul, you want to know, did my being in shul, did my being in the synagogue and saying and praying, did it have any meaning? You know how you can tell? By the way I speak to him, by the way you speak to somebody, by the way you speak to another person.
So true.
Yeah? It's by the way you speak. If it doesn't, if you pray and then afterwards when you speak to somebody, you're speaking without respect, without love, without this. Okay, so your prayer was probably on this not much better. Understand? So it's not like there was a two parts to Aaron the Kohen. One part of him was he's holy, and the other part of him is he's a nice guy in the street. No, it goes together. It's the same one thing. Okay, it's the same one thing. So and more than that is that the real meaning, the real depth of relating with Hashem has to translate itself in the way you relate with people. And if you are on the level of actually saying God's name, then that means that you must be on the level that if you see two people having an argument, not getting along, husband and wife, partners, friends, whatever it is, that it bothers you enough that you're going to go and do something about it. Whatever it is that you're going to do about it is a different question. But in other words, that's already a question of what can I do about it, what can I not do, you understand? But you have to do something. Otherwise, saying God's name, so good, so you said God's name, Mazel Tov. Okay? Now, Now Rav Shlomo is going to contrast Aaron HaKohen with Korach. Korach is a very holy man. There's a parsha in the Torah coming up named after him. And Korach ended up leading a rebellion against Moshe and Aaron. Okay? Without going into why, but basically he led a rebellion against them, and he accused Moshe of not being an honest leader. That he accused Moshe of doing things on his own, that not everything that he was doing was commanded by God, and he it was a very tragic story. Now, the Talmud tells us that until this tragedy, Korach was a very, very holy man. Okay? So just keep in mind, a holy person can also make a huge mistake, right?
I have a quick question before you on. I want to know if my head is processing this right. When you said that basically Hashem wants us to say his name with a meaning behind it, like it actually going somewhere. So you know how like Hashem is recreating us every second, he's saying our name, and it has so much meaning and power because we have so much power. It's kind of like the same thing back and forth. Okay,
good.
That's so cool.
Very good. Now, Lumat Aaron Yeshet Korach. So now in distinction to Aaron, you have Korach. Korach Hayam Mistavev. Now he's being a little bit sarcastic here, but it's okay, be forgiven. Korach Hayam Mistavev Berachov Shnei Gabayim Beinayim Sigurot. Korach is so holy that when he walks in the street, he has two assistants, to lead him so that he can keep his eyes closed. Why? Because he looks like a very holy Rebbe. And he only speaks with other Rebbes. And even then his eyes are half closed. In other words, he doesn't want to see anything negative, he doesn't want to see anything unholy, right? So he's walking in the street with his eyes closed, he's so holy, right?
What he's saying here is that if somebody walks like that, that's a holy person.
No, I'm saying he's being a little bit sarcastic. Okay? You understand? Look, you'll see that the very religious, the Haredim, right, when they walk on the street, they keep their eyes to the ground, right? Okay, so it's true that you're not supposed to look at something that is not modest, whether it's an advertising that's not modest or a woman that's not dressed modestly, so you got to protect your eyes. You understand? So good. So Korach is very holy. He's walking. He has assistants, so that he doesn't have to. He's so holy. He doesn't want to see anything that's not modest. Okay, good. That's fine. But he says like this. We're second last line on the page. Ha'avodah shel Aaron HaKohen haya im bnei Adam. Aaron HaKohen, his work was mostly with people. Lo haya maftia oti, I wouldn't be surprised im hu haya mistavei mamash ke'amcha. I wouldn't be surprised if he walked around in the streets dressed like everybody else. I wouldn't be surprised if you would find Aaron HaKohen, if you would want to see Aaron HaKohen, that you would most likely find him in the street talking to people more than having to get an appointment in the temple. Okay? Page 57. So when you're looking externally, so let's say there's Korach walking in the street, like with his eyes closed, and there's Aaron, dressed in his like everybody else. What would you imagine? You would say, "Oh, that's the holy guy, right?" And that Aaron is like a regular guy, right?
Tricked by the outside look.
By the outside look, right? Yeah. Okay. So Hayim Zok Dushal Istavev Bein Kol HaAnashim K'mo Aaron HaKohen. After all, how holy is it to walk around like Aaron HaKohen, like everybody else? That's holy, because basically holy means separate. אלא מה? באמת זוהי הקדושה האמיתית. But the truth is, this is the true holiness. The true holiness is to be among the people and to make peace between the people. הרי מה הקדוש ברוך הוא עושה? What's God doing all the time? יושב בשמיים ושולח פתקאות ארצה? You think God is just sitting in heaven and he's sending text messages down to earth? הקדוש ברוך הוא, what does he say? He says, מלוא כל הארץ כבודו. The glory of God fills the entire universe. הוא השם נמצא בכל מקום. God is everywhere. Right?
Can I ask you something?
Sure.
Kadosh usually is like separate and elevate. So, in my understanding, how can you do that and be among the people at the same time? How is that the more you are among the more...
By raising the people up.
You have to...
Yeah. In other words, it's not that you're among the people and you're just sitting and having a beer with them. You can be sitting and having a beer with them and raising them up.
And that will make you and other people.
Yeah.
But isn't it the same true? Like if I'm looking to an unmodest picture or unmodest person dressed, it's the same thing. If I'm trapped by the outside look of the people, I'm going to see an unmodest.
Right, but
if I am in the heart and I'm
yes, but it's also true that as holy as your soul might be, it's living in a body that has an animal soul also. Okay, so there's an animalistic part of our being that's always looking for pleasure, and if you arouse the animal, okay, so you could end up going in the wrong direction. Understand? So the idea of being careful with the way we look and how we look and the way we look and so on is to be careful not to arouse the animal part of ourselves, which could go in the wrong direction.
I have a little bit. I understand this, but I have a little bit of
trouble.
Not trouble.
Yeah.
Some other
issue.
Feeling
Yeah.
about that.
Okay.
It's about like I can still be there, but I can still stay in my heart. And if I am truly aware that
it's possible.
Where I am truly there and I am not seeing something wrong out there. It's just
right.
I'm there, and then I'm raising together with this person.
You could, yeah. In other words, when Aaron HaKohen was walking in the street, right? So he is Aaron HaKohen. He is the high priest. You understand? He was able to do that.
Yeah.
Most of us generally need to be very careful. Okay. Look, everybody knows that Rav Shlomo used to hug everybody, including women. But I can tell you one thing. I walked with him in the street, and I saw him hugging stinky, filthy, homeless people, no less than he hugged anybody else. You understand? So if you can hug a person who hasn't taken a bath in 6 months and is living in the street, and you can hug them just as easily as you hug a beautiful person, then you're in that level. But if you make a distinction that a good-looking person, or a clean person, that person you can hug, but you can't hug somebody who smells bad, then you're not on that level. Okay? So he says like this. Elama. Yeah. So he says Zelo chidush sheli. Now, what he's going to say now is not my own deep insight, but rather it's Perusho shel Rabbi Naftali Merav Shis. There's a verse in Tehillim that says, "Vayikanu Moshe b'machaneh la'aron kedosh Hashem." They were jealous of Moshe in the camp, and of Aaron, the Holy One, to God. So he says like this. And I'm just going to skip reading the next few lines for just the next couple of paragraphs. I just want to tell it to you like this. So Moshe was more like the inside person inside the camp, and Aaron was out in the street with the people. So Korach, what did he do? To Moshe he said, "Why are you in your office? You should be in the street." To Aaron, who's in the streets, he's saying, "Why are you in the street? You should be in the temple." Okay.
Also, it's
So-
the opposite of what Aaron would tell someone they said something that they hadn't said to bring them together, and
Yeah.
Korach was doing the opposite, was telling them so that they would split up.
Right.
So
Right. Right. So skip down to about the paragraph that begins with the word Ha'amet. Okay. Ha'amet, you see it? We're about 10 lines from the bottom. Ha'amet, the truth is שברמה לא משיחית, ענן משיח level, בעיניים לא משיחיות, with non-Mashiach eyes. In other words, if you're just looking superficially, Korach hu be'emet kadosh. Korach is holy. הוא כל כך קדוש שכאשר הוא מסתובב ברחוב עם הגבאים שלו, הוא אפילו לא פותח את העיניים. Korach is so holy that when he's walking in the streets with his assistants, he doesn't open his eyes. כי הוא מפחד שחלילה יראה משהו לא קדוש, because he's afraid that maybe God forbid he'll see something not holy. So what's happening? He said, כל היהודים השבורים, all the broken-hearted Jews, עוברים על ידו, are passing by him, והוא לא שם לב, and he's not paying any attention to them, מרוב שהוא שומר את עיניו בקדושה, because he's so busy keeping his eyes holy, that he doesn't see the problems that people are having. So says Rav Shlomo, דעו לכם, you should know, 4 lines from the bottom, דעו לכם, know, שזוהי לא קדושה אמיתית, that's not real holiness. בעולם לא משיחי, but in a world which is not on the level of Mashiach, in other words, it's still looking בעולם חיצוני, in a superficial world, זה מה שנקרא קדושה. That's the way people define holiness. So, כתוב בזוהר הקדוש, שקורח חלק על השבת. The Zohar says that Korach argued against Shabbos. האם קורח לא שמר על שבת קודש? Does that mean to say that he didn't keep Shabbos? No, for sure not. אני בטוח שהוא דקדק בהלכות שבת כחוט השערה. I'm sure that he followed all the laws of Shabbos down to the last, down to the last detail. אלא מה? הוא חלק על כל העולם הפנימי. What he was arguing against was the inner world. כי בשבילו השבת נראית כמו יום ראשון. Because for him, Shabbos was really not very different than Sunday. In other words, Rav Shlomo explains, כאשר יש לך עיניים חיצוניות, if you're looking with external eyes, השבת נראית כמו יום ראשון. Shabbos looks like any other day. אך כאשר יש לך עיני שבת, but if you have Shabbos eyes, העולם נראה לגמרי אחרת. The world looks different. הקדוש ברוך הוא אומר לנו שהשאלה היא לא האם לבחור בין אהרון לקורח. God is telling us that the real question is not whether to choose between Aaron or Korach, but rather השאלה היא האם הכל פנימי או חיצוני. What do you see? Do you see the external or do you see the inner? Do you see the inside? כאשר המרגלים הגיעו לארץ ישראל, הם הוציאו עליה דיבה. When the spies came before we got to Israel, and they were checking out Israel, they spoke against Israel. הייתה להם אותה בעיה. They had the same problem. היו להם עיניים חיצוניות. They saw Israel with external eyes. They were looking at the external aspects of Israel. בן אדם יכול לבוא לירושלים ולראות רק את החיצוניות. כמה בתים, כמה פחי אשפה, מהו הכותל המערבי בשבילו, אם לא עוד כמה אבנים. Person can come to Yerushalayim, and you can see it with external eyes, how many houses there are, how many new houses there are, how many garbage cans there are, and for him, what's the kotel? It's just another bunch of stones. מה כן מוצא חן בעיניו? What does attract him? בניינים הבנויים לתפארת. What attracts him is nice looking, beautiful buildings. מלון חדש בירושלים, a new hotel, and בריכת שחייה בפנים with a swimming pool. כאשר יש לך עיניים חיצוניות, אתה לא רואה כלום. If you have eyes that just see the external, you don't see anything. אך אם יש לך עיניים פנימיות, but if you have eyes to see deeper, גוואלד, אתה רואה הכל, then you see everything.
What is Gevald?
It's a Yiddish word. You're from Argentina, you should speak Yiddish. Montreal and Argentina, that's where the Jews really speak Yiddish.
No,
So.
my mom is Canadian. I never heard Gevald. I didn't hear it.
Gewalt means wow. Okay? Okay? Crown Heights, a few of the people speak Yiddish.
We got it. We have.
Why here says that Shabbat and Yom Rishon on the outside is the same? Because even on the outside it's not the same. Like
You're doing different things, but as in the world, in other words, do you see that Shabbat is physically different?
Oh, okay.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah. So what's happening here is like this. Now, going back to the idea of protecting the eyes, okay? It says in this forum that if we look at things that we shouldn't look, it damages our ability to see deeply.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you understand? So, and that's why it's really important to be careful with what you're doing with your eyes, because it does damage. You know, like somebody was telling me, you know, that one of the problems with the internet is that even among religious people, is that there are people looking at pornography on the internet, and apparently there's been studies that the more pornography one watches, the more it affects their ability to relate sexually with their in their home. You know, it damages it. It's you understand, the eyes are not just you just see. It's the eyes are connected with the heart. It's a very, very sensitive instrument that God gave us, and we have to be careful with it. And you know, and just to show you how special the eyes are, where on the body do you see the evidence of a person's soul most of all? Is the eyes. Understand? So the eyes are very, very special. So then when we speak about Shmirat Einayim, guarding the eyes is a very, very important thing. And that's why, and guess who knows that better than anybody else? The advertising business. They know exactly. They know that. They know. Show it to the person, and it's you know, you're already starting the business, right?
Yeah, like you say, also we learned this morning. Sooner
If I stay in the all the time just true to my heart, not with the mind, you know, like
I understand.
then it wouldn't bothering me like the look of the person from the outside, whatever he dresses or she dresses or not dresses. I will be just
you have to
connected
be,
to
yeah, that's true.
the heart, and I will see the heart
So
in
that's
that.
that's what Rav Shlomo is saying. Is that if you have superficial eyes, then it will affect it will make a difference. But if you're on the level of you have of Mashiach eyes, in other words, like what you're calling being true with your heart, then it won't make a difference. That's true.
Mhm.
Yeah. But the, you know, like the you know, even though I don't really know you that well personally, but from the few things that you've said, so consider among all the people you know and the ones that have had similar life experiences to you, how many are like you?
People are changing. We are
Okay,
also changing a lot, and I'm
right.
coming from a very different place.
But you realize, but you understand,
Sure.
how many people do you meet that are living that way? You understand? The majority, even those who are connecting a little bit at a time, they still get caught in this world.
But I'm more
Think about it,
interested about how I
You
perceive.
said it, fine.
And then this is changing actually.
Okay.
The way the
Think about it like this,
people
right?
around
When
me.
you
Yeah.
surround yourself with people, right, they have an effect on you, whether you know it or not, subconscious effect on you. Now, as much as you can love another person, it's probably the hardest thing in the world to stay with people who are going to hang around garbage dumps all day, and because they don't want to do anything with their life, they don't want to try. Right? I'm not talking about like, okay, fine, I don't know anybody, I'm just saying in general. It's gonna have some sort of effect on you. You're not gonna always see them in the way that you're set.
Liba, she knows that because she left.
Yeah,
She
but
made a
listen,
big
you're
change
not
in
gonna
her life.
always see them or see yourself the same way. You're like, oh look at these people. There's no one else around but these types of people. Maybe I'm one of them. Trust me. I'm just saying, like, this is like the ultimate. What you're saying, right, is like the ultimate place where you want to be. But it's like if you just see, you're not. Depends what you're gonna surround yourself with. Right now, you're surrounded by Taurus, so you're feeling like, wow, I'm really uplifted, right? But it's the times where you're not surrounded by that, and that's the biggest test.
Yes, but it is there for me. This test.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that you have the courage to make a change.
Sure.
You understand?
But we all have the possibility.
The possibility, yeah.
Possibility, but
And
most
the
people don't want
possibility
it.
all the time, it exists all the minute, all the second for all of us. So it's just to,
No,
to
not
trust in this. For me.
No. First of all, you have to be a person that actually thinks about these things and meditates on them and realizes that there's a possibility. And then when you realize there's a possibility, you have to have the courage to make a big change in your life. This takes a lot of courage. So it's not so simple, okay? But it's definitely possible. But it's not simple. It's not a simple thing. Okay, but let's go back to this for now, okay?
This is a good subject.
It's a very good
Very
subject.
important subject.
No, but this is relating, okay?
Yes.
But because I want to see what Shlomo is saying like this, okay? But the last point that he just made like this, he said that that's the why aren't, like, if in the next year 2 million Jews would make Aliyah, the world would realize clearly that Israel belongs to the Jews.
What?
The world would realize that Israel belongs to the Jews. What the world is seeing is that they're seeing a lot of Jews not coming to Israel. So they sort of think to themselves, even that who says it, that do these Jews believe that Israel is theirs? If it's really your home, then why don't you come home? You understand? Okay. So I'm saying if in the next year 2 million people with 2 million Jews will come to Israel, and then the next year another 2 million, and people will see, wow, Israel really is belonging to the Jews, right? So if people come here and they look at Israel like any other country, so they're not attracted. Once Reb Shlomo was at some kind of gathering, and he met at the time the minister of tourism. Tourism, right? And so Shlomo said, give me a budget, and I'll bring you in the next year. I'll bring you 20,000 olim. And he says to him, he says, this is how you're advertising Israel. You're advertising Israel by making posters of beaches and men in bathing suits and women in bikinis, and that's how you're going to bring the Jews to Israel. If they want to go to a beach, they can go to Rio de Janeiro. They can go anywhere else. They don't have to come to Israel. If you want to advertise Israel, let the people know what Israel is really about. And the ministers looked at him. What do you know? Okay. But he actually did have that conversation with him. And it's still what they're doing. They say they come to Israel, it's like everywhere else. Well, if it's like everywhere else, why should they come? Okay. So now Reb Shlomo is getting into what it's all about. So he says like this. If you have time, we're going to go a little bit later than 1:30. Okay. So he says, the Parshat B'haalotcha, last paragraph on 58. Okay? Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, כאשר אהרון הכהן ראה את בעל העבירה הכי גדול, when Aaron the Kohen saw the biggest sinner, אתם חושבים שהוא היה אומר לו כמה הוא גרוע? Do you think that Aaron would tell that person how bad he is? אלא שהבעל העבירה היה נהיה פתאום ליהודי פנימי בנוכחותו. What really happened is that when this sinner was in the presence of Aaron the Kohen, all of a sudden this man really got in touch with his inside. הפנימיות התחילה להאיר החוצה. All of a sudden his innermost dimension started to illuminate outwardly. Okay? So, you asked a question before, Liba, like when the commentators explained that when you saw two people fighting, you'd say to this one, your friend feels so bad, you'd say to the other one, your friend feels so bad. It sounds like a manual for kindergarten teachers, right? Right?
Right.
So, two kids are fighting over a toy, and you say, oh, he feels bad, make peace. But obviously, the commentators on the Mishnah were very deep people. And what they're basically saying is like this: what he did was that when Aaron the Kohen would meet somebody, why is it that why do people want to meet somebody holy? Why do people run to tzaddikim or to tzadkaniyot? Because the fact is that living in this world, very often we forget, and sometimes we don't even believe anymore that we actually have a soul, that we actually have something deep inside our being. Okay? When you meet somebody who's a really holy person, even if they don't say anything to you, even if they just walk by you in the street and they take a look at you, that holy part of you gets awakened, is aroused. Okay? So what happened was, when even the biggest sinner, when he was in the presence of Aaron the Kohen, even if 2 minutes before he might have been thinking, I'll never change, when he was in the presence of Aaron the Kohen, the holiness that's in every one of us started to vibrate. Okay? And that's why Yaakov went to Chaim and said, I feel so terrible that I fought with you. And Chaim felt so terrible that I fought with you. That's how Aaron the Kohen did it. Okay? So yes.
Sometimes it happens that when you see that person, you feel what you're saying, but at the same time, you feel kind of guilty that, I'm so far away from that.
So that's already the Yetzer Hara is coming and trying to stop you from going further. So you see, guilt is like this. If guilt pushes you towards the positive, then it's kosher guilt.
Mm-hmm.
If it makes you say, oh, I'm too far away, forget it, then it's not kosher guilt. Okay?
So the right thing is like, even if you do a little bit,
every step is worth something. Yes.
you don't have to be like that person, but just a
Right.
little bit.
Right. You have to be inspired to do something. Yeah. Okay? So he says, so I'm going to skip the next paragraph and then we're going to just go on to his explanation. Okay? So Aaron the Kohen, what's his job? His job is to light the candles, right? To light the menorah, right? So what does that mean, to light the menorah? Obviously, it's not that God is sitting in the dark in the temple and he's saying, Aaron, could you please turn on the lights? Right? So what is the whole thing of lighting the menorah? The whole thing of lighting the menorah is basically the real job of the Kohen, and he's a Kohen, it says, Neir Hashem Nishmat Adam. The candle of God is the soul of man. In other words, every one of you, every one of us is a candle of God. Okay? The Kohen's job is to light the candles. Neir Hashem Nishmat Adam. Right. So he says like this. Eich, page 59. How does the Torah world today, in general, it's making a generalization, how do they approach a Jew who's not keeping mitzvot? They tell him, Tirei achi, listen my brother, or have a look, you better change. Look at how disgusting you are, the way you're living your life. Look at what you look like. But how did Aaron HaKohen approach a Jew? He would teach him in a way that he didn't try to change the person. He's not interested in the person changing. But rather what happened was that at the moment that a Jew met Aaron, a fire started burning inside. In other words, Habaya shel Yehudi hi lo hu ba'atzmo, ela rak shehu lo b'pnimit. The problem that the Jew has is not him himself. His problem is that he's not connected with his inside. Okay? Lo tzarich lishtanot klal. He doesn't have to change at all. Kol Yehudi hu kadosh, because by definition, a Jew is kadosh. Hu rak tzarich liyot k'tzat yoter pnimi. He needs to be more connected inside. Lilmod eich le'ahov anashim ze lo davar chitzoni. To learn how to love people is not an external thing. Hashela hi haimat haroeh shekulam nivru b'tzelem elokim. The real question is, do you see that all people are created in the image of God? Do you actually see that? Do you see how truly deep people really are? Do you see how deep life is? What do you see? What do you feel? Are you an external person or an inner person? Okay. So this is what Aaron HaKohen was doing. Understand? So when he says that the greatness of Aaron HaKohen was that he wasn't changing anything, Vayaz Kain Aharon, right? God told him to light the candles, and that's what he did. He didn't go to the person and say, "Hey, something's wrong with you. You better change." He would put the person back in touch with with his real essence. And when he put the person back in touch with his real essence, the person himself already knew he's got what he needs to do.
So he lit their internal candles.
He lit their internal candles.
This
is if you go back to page 56 at the top of the page, Melamed Shalosh Shina. You see the title, right? In other words, he taught the person. He's giving a different interpretation here. He's saying he taught the person without changing the person.
He found the person inside him and
Exactly.
he lighted him inside himself.
That's right.
Because there is no separation there.
He lit the candle inside, and it started to illuminate outward. Understand? So removing the separation. You understand?
How do we do this? I mean, us or another.
So Rabbi Nachman says the way you do it is by always focusing on the positive in another person. Look at the positive in them. Right? So we were talking about at the meal and Shavuot, very clear. Okay? Focus whatever you focus on in another person and in yourself. That's the space that you're going to. That's where you are. If you're focusing on the good, you're in a good place.
But can I
If you're focusing on the negative, you're going into a negative space.
It'll also bring the positive out of them.
That's it. But how? By focusing on the positive.
It means like the godliness of that person in me.
In them.
Which is not that.
No,
which
yeah,
is
yes,
me. Yeah.
no, it's both.
Yeah, both. But first here, you know.
You don't
Well, you have to be in that space yourself to be able to
Yeah.
do it. Yes.
First it starts there, then it goes there.
You have.
And you don't then talk about the negative, or after saying a lot of positive, you kind of suggest.
You depending on your relationship with that person and so on.
But in general, focus on the positive.
Listen, you can always add on.
Even if it's just one thing.
Listen, there's always that concept that when you see perhaps what we call a negative trait in somebody else, it's brought down that it's a reflection of something that you have to fix.
Yeah.
So
But
always look at somebody in the positive, then
No, but that's projection in psychology. They call it projection. But even without that, that's also absolutely true. But Dvora, right? Dvora was asking how it's one thing that Aaron and Cohen was able to do that. How do we do that? You understand? So Nachman's teaching of focusing on the good points, that's a practical thing that everyone could do.
Yeah, because in this world, people tend to, in general, to talk a lot about the negative things.
To see what's wrong, yeah.
If you start doing positive, it's going to have some kind of effect.
It's also important for each of us to focus on our positive.
And our own too, and our own also, absolutely, right?
One more thing can I say?
Sure.
But it's not, the positive is not something mental, I feel. Like it's more like opening in me into the godliness of godly space. It's not that I will think I am a good person, I'm a good person,
No.
it's going to be a good thing.
Right, but let's say, for example, we're now just talking on the practical level, okay?
Yeah.
So let's say I take a look at what did I do in the last 24 hours, okay? So let's say for 23 hours and 59 minutes I didn't do anything good, and for 1 minute only for 1 minute I did something good. But Nachman says focus on that 1 minute.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is a very practical
Don't blame
thing.
yourself because you did
No,
something
no. I'm responsible. I'm still responsible for everything I did.
Yeah.
I'm responsible for everything. I'm responsible for everything I did. The issue is, what am I focusing on? So if I'm focusing on the negative, I'm going to stay in the negative space. If I'm focusing on the positive, then I have a chance to continue in the positive way. Understand? You're talking more on another level. Dvorah was asking, practically speaking, what do you do? Understand? So Aaron Kohen is looking at his Yid, and what does he see? He sees his neshama. He sees his soul. Understand? So the person's soul is coming back alive. Understand? I was so sure that after doing this and after doing that, I don't even know if I have a soul anymore, right? And Aaron Kohen, I meet Aaron Kohen, and he meets me, and all of a sudden I feel like, hey, I do have a soul. Okay, so that's already on a deeper level. But practically speaking, I'm not Aaron Kohen. Maybe you are, but I'm not. Understand? And what do I do? How do I function? How do I do it? So the practical application is that when you see somebody, focus on the positive. Even if you don't know what it is, but you can just say, I'm sure they must have done something good in school in one day. I'm sure that one day in their life they didn't get kicked out of school. I'm sure that one day their mother sent them to buy something at the store and they actually did it. You know what I mean? But and by focusing on that, you're putting the person into a good space. Literally. You're actually putting them into a positive space. When it comes to your own self, the same is true for your own self.
Nice, thank you.
Okay, good to see you. Comfortable.
I enjoyed that.
Anyway, this is the end. We're finished.